Have you ever played a game for the first time and just absolutely hated it? Yeah, that was me with this game. I know, Fallout New Vegas is one of those games that most people pretty highly regard as one of the best to ever do it, but I bounced off this game hard. Which is funny because at the time of writing this script, it's currently my second most played game on Steam. Yeah, I'm not here to say that Fallout New Vegas is a good game, because I think as a species we've had collectively 15 years to figure that out. But I'm still probably going to say that more than once in this video. But it wasn't always like that. Oh no, this game was, pretty much, well, it wasn't necessarily slammed upon release, but the fact that developers basically didn't fucking finish it certainly didn't help. The story of New Vegas' development is a tale that's been told hundreds of times by far more qualified people than myself. So if you, for whatever reason, want that, go and watch one of the, probably several dozen New Vegas video essays that go into how this game's development was a mess. But the long and the short of it goes something like this. In the late 90s, there was this little series of classic PC RPG games called, drumroll please, Fallout. They very much fit into the style at the time, so to speak. Turn-based, isometric role-playing games with very little hand-holding in a generally dark atmosphere. The biggest defining factor that set this game apart from its RPG brethren of the time, though, was its setting. Fallout and its sequel, well, two sequels, but the second one is a topic for its own video, were atom punk post-nuclear apocalyptic. Think Mad Max and glorious isometric 2.5D. They reviewed well and sold amicably, but it wasn't really enough. The nature of these games being very niche PC role-playing games in the late 90s, when faster-paced games were coming to PC en masse, meant that this entire genre was generally relegated to the more experienced PC gamers, we'll say. So, after much financial trouble, not specifically caused by Fallout's mediocre success, the third game, Fallout Van Buren, or at least that's what the working title was cancelled. This was what was originally going to be Fallout 3. Technically, it was also a product of Black Isle Studios, but since Black Isle was a subsidiary of Interplay, I'm just kind of lumping them together. Regardless, the original two games had a pretty massive impact on the gaming landscape, even if it wouldn't be known until many decades later. But one thing was for certain though, these games had their fans, and one of those nerds happened to be in a pretty important position at the Bethesda Softworks game company. Yeah, you probably know where this is going. Todd Howard, being a noted fan of the Fallout games and executive producer at Bethesda, managed to get a hold of the Fallout IP in the early 2000s. And of course, this is a very brief retelling of how all of this went down, and I hate to give Todd Howard as much credit as I'm giving him now, but he does still deserve some level of credit, considering the fact that without him, Fallout really wouldn't be where it was now, even if that state is, well, it's not good. He did bring this franchise back from the brink, though, and I suppose we can always thank him for that. But that's neither here nor there. Either way, Fallout 3 releases in 2008 to amicable praise by critics, but the bigger win here is the fact that it managed to bring this niche hardcore PC RPG into a wider audience. Hindsight being 2020, of course, the game is kinda just... it's okay, but really that's only when you compare it to what came before, and especially what came after. It had a far more stripped-back approach to the classics RPG elements, with a far greater focus on just being a post-apocalyptic dungeon crawler. I think the game is just fine myself, but for a lot of people it pales in comparison to what came after. That game being Fallout New Vegas. And yes, I know we're 3 pages into this script, and we're finally talking about the game in the title of this video, so yeah, so much for that short version crap. New Vegas is basically the prodigal son of the greater Fallout community, but it wasn't always like that. The game's development, which was done by Obsidian Entertainment on contract by Bethesda, was kind of a massive shit show. You see, Obsidian was given 18 months to finish this game, which is only about a year and a half. For reference, Fallout 3 had a development cycle of nearly 4 years, and considering all of the stuff that Obsidian managed to cram into this game, it's a miracle it came out at all. One of the major reasons that this game is seen as the best in the series by many of Fallout's diehard fans is because of the fact that it brought back a lot more of the in-depth role-playing mechanics that were lost in the transition to 3D. This is due in no small part to the fact that many of the developers at Obsidian working on this game were originally developers at Black Isle, who worked on Van Buren before it was cancelled. With that being said, none of that really mattered when the game initially released, and it barely functioned. Despite the developers' best efforts, New Vegas released in a comically buggy state. I still feel bad for the people who had to play this game on the original Xbox 360 release. It was just... even now playing this game on console is kind of a bad idea. But with years of patches and bug fixes, 5 major DLCs, and nearly 15 years of fan-made mods to fix the game, its reputation has turned around. I mean, even at the time, the game was still received well. The lucky people who managed to get the game working had very positive things to say. Of course, the critical response wasn't positive enough to give it an 85, which was the score that Bethesda required for Obsidian to get their bonus, but that's neither here nor there. The game has now transcended cult classic territory and has gone on to be recognized not only as one of the best in the series, but also one of the best games just period. Because yeah, this game is just great. Hell, on some days I think it does fall into my favorite game of all time slot. But for the sake of this video, I'll try to be as retrospective as possible, we'll say. Speaking of which, I think it's time that we actually, start the game. For this video, I played with a nominal number of mods, 63 to be specific. And I know that sounds like a pretty big number, but for me that is basically the bare minimum that I can play with now. Besides, most of those are just minor fix mods that improve stability and keep crashes to a minimum. The vast majority of them were installed as part of the Viva New Vegas modding guide, which I highly recommend. It's a great way for you to get into modding the game for the first time if you've never dabbled with that stuff before, and it's also super low-key, easy to understand, even if it took me about like 2 hours to set up. Still worth it though. Enough, let's just play this goddamn game. The year is 2281. The Great Nuclear Exchange between the United States of America and Communist China occurred over 2 centuries ago in 2077. In just a few short hours, the two greatest superpowers in the world reduced mankind's creations to a pile of smoldering rubble. But fear not, as there is still hope. Kinda, sorta. For like the 0.1% of the population there is anyways. A company called Vault-Tec has prepared various bomb-proof shelters, called vaults, for this very occasion. Of course, all of these vaults were actually horrible social experiments designed to bend the human psyche to the point of breakage, but that's a topic for later. But many were not lucky enough to seek shelter in these vaults. And what does all of this have to do with the immediate story of New Vegas? Well, fuck all. Really, this is all just set up for the greater Fallout lore as a whole. The reason why everything is, like this now. Our story starts in the Mojave Wasteland, but more specifically Las Vegas, which has been aptly renamed to the city of New Vegas after the war. Compared to the rest of the wasteland around it, the world-famous Las Vegas Strip seems almost untouched by the war, a shining beacon of man's greed standing in defiance of the decay around it. We can thank Robert House for that, CEO of Robco, a major pre-war electronics company and the proprietor of the Lucky 38 Casino. It was thanks to his foresight in installing various active defense systems around New Vegas that kept it in one piece. Various warheads were disarmed and subsequently destroyed mid-flight, keeping most of the Strip, and importantly, for House, the Lucky 38 Casino intact. Now the Strip stands as a bastion of the old world, a city of sin protected by an army of robot enforcers guided by the unseen hand of Mr. House. But he's not the only faction on the Strip. In the wake of the destruction of man, and House's insistence on rebuilding Vegas to his liking, House rallied 3 tribes. 3 families to take ownership of the Strip's other major casinos. They bicker and fight with one another from time to time, but ultimately they are still under the control of Mr. Not at Home. But there is a more worrying presence on the Strip, at least in House's eyes. The New California Republic, the NCR, probably the closest thing to a proper government in the entirety of the post-war United States. Aptly founded in California, they began aggressively expanding to claim as much territory as possible, absorbing it into the greater NCR state, claiming to bring pre-war democracy back into the wasteland. However, this chapter in the Mojave has proven to be majorly difficult, not only due to House's iron grip over the Strip, but because of another faction that has come up from the east, equally interested in the strategic point of Vegas. Caesar's Legion, or more commonly just the Legion. A faction of ruthless tribal slavers set to the image of ancient Roman culture, led by the ruthless man himself, Caesar. Or Caesar if you want to be really fucking specific and pedantic. The legionaries pronounce it Caesar, everyone else just calls him Caesar. I'll do whichever one seems fitting for the moment. They have proven to be a major enemy to the NCR ever since the beginning of their Mojave chapter. Enough so for there to have already been one major skirmish in the form of the Battle of Hoover Dam. Hoover Dam's strategic capability and point of interest made it a very enticing offer for the Legion and the NCR. Being practically in spitting distance of Vegas certainly didn't make anything easier for the two factions. Whoever holds the dam has a much greater shot at being able to take Vegas, House's presence notwithstanding. But the NCR won the battle, and kicked the Legion right back across the river. But the victory was only a small one, you see. The Legion doesn't give up so easily, and even now, several years after the battle, they still sit atop the hill, waiting, plotting, preparing. And in the face of all of this, the NCR still has yet to take true control of Vegas. With the Legion's looming presence and House's resilience, the NCR are more or less still at square one. And with an inevitable second war with the Legion on the horizon, things are looking grim in the Mojave. But all of this is irrelevant to us, the player. Hell, most of this information won't be relevant until we're tens of hours into this playthrough. For right now, our player character, simply known as the Courier, has a few bigger problems to worry about. You see, the job was supposed to be pretty simple. Deliver a small platinum chip to the Lucky 38 Casino on the Strip. The details were bizarre, sure, but nothing major seemed to be standing between us and a fat paycheck. So why in the world is this checkered suit-clad mook so dead set on getting it from us? Enough so to have us ambushed on the back roads outside of Good Springs. We won't have any answers yet, probably for a while, maybe even forever as it seems, as we've just stumbled our way into a 14-carat run of bad luck.
The game was rigged from the start. You're awake. How about that?
Brought back from the brink. Somehow, miraculously, the courier wakes up in the home of Doc Mitchell, resident doctor of the small town of Good Springs, Nevada. He managed to not only stitch our frontal cortex back together, but dig the 9mm slug out of our brain, with the help of movie magic or some shit. Either way, he's been taking care of us for the last few days now, and is relieved to see that we've revived, as it seems. Honestly, if I was a doctor and I brought a patient who had been shot in the head, and several days after they had been operated on had still not woken up, I personally would have called it quits, but I guess they don't get many patients around here. Still, he's had to do some reconstructive surgery on us, but he gives us the go-ahead to redo some things to our liking. This allows us to customize our character, and I usually end up making myself look exactly the same every time. Also, we're going under the pseudonym of Jimbo 4 Aces for the rest of this playthrough. All I'm saying is, if you know, you know. Anyways, next comes the allocation of special stats. These categories are basically the building blocks for your character. Let's break them down. Strength, which determines skill in melee weapons and how much shit you can carry. Perception, which determines explosives, energy weapons, among various other minor skills. Endurance, which determines your unarmed skill, your survival skill, which we'll talk about in a bit, as well as your starting hit points. It also has a few other attributes that we'll return to later. Then there's Charisma, which is worthless. Charisma is a dump stat, meaning that as soon as you can, dump all of the points out of it and put them into something more useful. Next is Intelligence, probably the most useful stat in the entire game, primarily because of the fact that it impacts the number of skill points you get whenever you level up. After that comes Agility, kind of an odd one, since it's not explicitly necessary, unless you're doing some very specific firearms-themed builds, as it affects the number of action points you get. More on those in a bit. Lastly is Luck, which is my favorite stat to dump points into. Besides giving a small boost to each of your skills, it also affects your chance of getting critical hits. And obviously, critical hits are a good thing, we want those. Big number equals big fun. This game being set around Las Vegas, it also affects your chances of winning at casinos, which can just be absolutely broken if you just dump 10 points into luck. I don't manage to get 10 luck until very, very late into this playthrough though. In the end, I settled on this build, a well-rounded enough character with a focus on close-range gunfighting and unarmed combat. I plan on counteracting our abysmal charisma by picking speech as one of our tag skills. Speaking of which, now we're on to skills. The doc sits us down and administers a word association, personality profile, and Rorschach test. Based on the answers we give the doc, the game will assign 3 tag skills that it believes will fit our playstyle. And of course, it's usually wrong, and I end up having to reassign them myself. Speech, as I mentioned earlier, as it's one of the best all-around skills in the game, allowing you to very quickly solve various quests and generally squeeze extra money out of people. Second is guns, because that's the fighting style I plan on sticking with for the majority of this playthrough. For the astute among you in the audience, you might have noticed that guns is now just guns instead of split between small guns and big guns. That's because those two skills were merged into what is now known as the gun skill. But that last skill is now survival. Again, more on that one in a bit. And the last one that I pick is only temporary. Barter. Think of it like speech, but specifically for extorting people. There's a quest we're going to be doing early on here that has a 25 barter skill check, and I want to be prepared. Before leaving Good Springs, I eventually change it out, as the game gives you one free opportunity to do so. Either way, Doc Mitchell has one last form for us to fill out, and this one determines our traits. Traits are a mechanic that have appeared sporadically throughout the series, being major factors in character building in Fallouts 1 and 2, but being entirely absent of the Bethesda entries. They're kinda like the perks you get later, but with downsides. Your critical hit chance can increase, but your weapons will degrade much faster, things like that. That trait that I just mentioned, Built to Destroy, is one that I almost considered taking, but I ended up taking Skilled and Small Frame. Skilled is one that I almost always take, due to the fact that it's basically a freebie. Plus 10 to every skill can make things much easier in the early game, allowing you to pass skill checks that you might not have been able to otherwise. The minus 10% experience gain is negligible in the grand scheme of things. My second trait is a little more ill-advised, we'll say. Small Frame is a good trait, but for a different kind of build. It gives you a free +1 to agility, allowing us to get all the way up to 9 without any buffs, but it increases the likelihood for our limbs to be broken. For a more long-ranged guns build, this would be fine, but seeing as I'm planning on going for a mixed unarmed firearms build, it's probably not the best choice. Built to Destroy or heavy-handed would have made far more sense. But with all of that out of the way, that's all that Doc Mitchell can really do for us. Well, besides one last thing. He gives us a parting gift with the rest of our gear, a Pip-Boy 3000. Think of it like this universe's equivalent to a smartphone, except probably better because you're not rotting your brain nearly as hard. It basically acts as your everything device. Your map, quest log, inventory, status effects screen, among a few other helpful features. I've downloaded a mod that makes it look like the Pip-Boy from the original games though, mainly because I just like the aesthetic.
Anyway, you ever get hurt out there, you come right back. I'll fix you up. But try not to get killed anymore.
This last dialogue gives us the option of activating hardcore mode if we so choose. Hardcore mode is Obsidian's response to fans wanting a more realistic survival experience. With hardcore mode active, you'll have to eat, sleep, and drink water at realistic enough intervals, because you can easily go like a week without sleeping in real life. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Also, don't do that in real life, that will kill you. It also makes healing harder, with items that healed you in an instant healing you over time instead. Your limbs are also much easier to cripple. And on top of all of this, ammunition has weight, which is always the biggest kicker for me since I like to hoard all of the ammo that I come across. For this playthrough I decided to not play with hardcore mode, although I did play the game on the hardest base difficulty very hard. Anyways, with all of that out of the way, we can step out into the wasteland for the first time, and let the real game begin. God, everything is so yellow. Let's change that. I've always personally preferred to play the game without the piss HUD, so for the rest of the video it's gonna be green. If you don't like that, then well, fuck you, I'm not remaking the whole video. One of the mods I installed for the Viva New Vegas project also removes the piss filter from the rest of the game, so if you're wondering why it's colorful, that's why. Anyways, we've got some asking around to do, since we need all the information we can get on the guy in the checkered coat. First thing we can talk to is Victor. This lovely robot cowboy happens to be the very secure trunk that dug us out of the shallow grave in the first place. He doesn't know much about our attackers, beyond the assumption that the one we're after is a New Vegas type, and yeah, no shit, Victor. But still, his presence is so wonderful that I really don't care. Next, I harass the local shopkeeper named Chet. He also has very little to tell us about our attackers, but I'm here for other reasons. He's the first merchant in the game, and for being what he is, he actually has a pretty good stock of supplies. We are, of course, completely broke, but I have an ace up my sleeve. You see, when the game launched, there were a few pre-order bonuses that players got if they ordered the game from specific retailers. Eventually, these 4 kits were bundled up and released on Steam as a DLC, and it's included for free in the Ultimate Edition of the game. This gives us a few costly weapon and armor sets that we can sell to Chet for an early head start on supplies. Selling a few of the weapons and all of the armor sets nets us enough money to buy a bunch of stim packs, some 9mm ammo for our starting pistol, as well as a silencer for a 5.56 caliber varmint rifle, which we'll be getting our hands on very soon. Oh, and a set of crappy leather armor, which will keep us protected from only marginally more than wearing nothing would. And that's because its damage threshold is very, very low. Damage threshold is a system that is technically new to New Vegas, as the other games in the series feature a system called damage resistance. To better explain how this works, let's compare a set of leather armor in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas. In Fallout 3, a set of leather armor has a damage resistance of 24 points, effectively meaning that a player can soak up to 24% of the damage dealt by an enemy, not factoring in any other perks or status effects that the player has. In Fallout New Vegas, leather armor has a damage threshold of 6, meaning that, regardless of anything, 6 points of damage from the enemy's weapon can be directly ignored. Of course, it's technically more complicated than that, in both cases, but the general outcome is the same. While I personally like damage threshold more, primarily because I find it easier to break in many different ways that we'll be getting to later, both systems work just fine in doing the same thing in the grand scheme of things. V-Armor does a good enough job at protecting us from the baby mantises inside the abandoned schoolhouse, though. The only reason I'm here is to crack the safe in the back, which has a stealth boy in it. It's a doohickey that lets you turn invisible for a short period of time. Useful in a few specific circumstances, but because my build is suboptimal, we'll say, I have to hack the nearby terminal instead of opening it with a lockpick. Hacking in this game, it just fucking blows, like really bad. It's not even remotely good. It's like playing Hangman, but the only way for you to gauge what letters are actually in the word is by having the computer tell you the number of letters in the word that match the actual password, if that makes any sense. I know that was kind of a crappy summary. It's annoying and I never fully get the hang of it, but thankfully the game is nice enough to throw us a bone and I only have to retry this hack like 6 times. But once the safe is open, we can find a cornucopia of loot. Anyways, with our little scavenging run out of the way, I think it's time we pop into the local saloon. Sunny Smiles is this game's tutorial NPC. The doc told us that we should see her if we want a few pointers on surviving in the wastes. All I see out of this, though, is free experience and a free gun. So I decided to take her up on her offer. The first stage is pretty simple, shoot some bottles with his varmint rifle. Impressed by our ability to single-handedly decrease the glass bottle population, Sunny enlists our aid in clearing out some nearby watering holes from some rowdy geckos. Okay, sounds easy enough. This is when I decided to attach that silencer I got from Chet. Weapon mods were another improvement that the developers made to the Fallout formula. They were another thing that modders had added into Fallout 3, in the face of their absence after Fallout 2. They are about what you'd expect though. Magazine increases, higher powered scopes, silencers, the works. Not every weapon has access to these mods, but the ones that do usually have a few to pick from. Some categories do get more love than others, though. Our first fight with the geckos is when the game introduces VATS combat, though. VATS was a system introduced in Fallout 3, as an adaptation of the targeted shots mechanic from the isometric games. It basically acted as an aimbot that let you target parts of your enemy's body. It is a little less robust than the original, though. You can't aim for the eyes or the groin, but frankly that first one is kind of understandable, because aim shots to the eyes were always incredibly broken in the original games. Either way, VATS is really the only reason that action points have stuck around, since regular combat now negates the need for them entirely. Bigger guns require more AP to use, and your AP is determined by your agility, among a few other factors. Either way, I'm sure this helped out many console players in the past. With the first well cleared out, Sonny says that there's a few more we can clear out if we want some more cash. I oblige, since the geckos are easy enough to dispatch, especially with the machete we were gifted at birth for some reason. Clearing out this last well even lets us save this settler, who's nice enough to give us some water as a thank you, and increases our faction rep with the town of Good Springs. Reputation is another mechanic that the developers pulled out of the well from the old games. It's pretty straightforward. Do good things for people, they like you. Do bad things, they hate you. Good reputation has its benefits, while bad reputation has its downsides. I find that it's a lot easier to track too, since the game will outright tell you if something you're doing is pissing people off. Regardless, with the 3 wells cleared out, Sonny offers to give us a crafting tutorial, which I politely decline. We've already squeezed the most important bits out of this quest. Crafting is something we'll be getting into later, as it's been much expanded from the previous games. Either way, Sonny tells us to head back up to the saloon. Trudy, one of the town's leading figures, would probably want to see that we're well after, well, you know. And so that's just what we do. Of course, that's only after I head back to the Good Spring Cemetery and do a little bit of light grave robbing.
I'm done being nice. If you don't hand Ringo over soon, I'm going to get my friends and we're burning this town to the ground. Got it?
We'll keep that in mind. Now, if you're not gonna buy something, get out.
What the hell is your problem?
The man in the strange blue uniform is a powder ganger. Trudy sums them up best as just another chain gang. Only these guys have dynamite, which makes them a little dangerous. A few years back, they staged a prison break at the NCRCF Correctional Facility. God, what a fucking mouthful that name is. And kicked the NCR running the place out, basically taking hold of it as a giant fortress. Since then, they've been using their stashes of explosives to terrorize the local settlements. Sometime a week or so ago, a trader named Ringo came into town. His caravan came in from the north, and had to pass right through Powderganger territory. Joe Cobb and his merry band of misfits struck and killed everyone in Ringo's caravan but himself. Now he's holed up here in Good Springs. Guess that would explain why Joe Cobb's here, wants to finish the job. The town folks are understandably not fond of the dynamite-wielding maniacs, but are in a bit of a stalemate, and Ringo's arrival has not made anything better. Well, I suppose we should go and pay the man a visit at least, see how he's faring in all of this. He's understandably skeptical, but after some chatting, he cools off. He tries to rope us into playing his weird card game, but I decline. We're here to talk about our little Powderganger problem. You can side with the Powdergangers if you so choose, but not only is that the obviously evil option, there is a shockingly small amount of Powderganger content in this game. A few optional quests with some meddling early game rewards. Besides, raiding their fortress later is way more enjoyable. So, we agree to help Ringo out. Never was my favorite Beetle, but I'll personally take him over John any day. Dumb jokes aside, the first person we talk to is Sunny Smiles, who...
Say no more. I'm in.
Well, okay then. The 3 of us still stand a very little chance, though, against a bunch of convicts. So she tells us that we should look to enlist some of the townsfolk. Trudy, Chet, Easy Pete, the local grandpa and walking meme, and Doc Mitchell. All of them can be convinced to join by passing various skill checks. First comes Trudy, who can be convinced using speech. She'll round up some townsfolk, bolstering our numbers considerably. Next is Chet, who can be convinced with barter. This is the only reason I tag barter during character creation. He offers to supply everyone with extra ammo, but more importantly a set of leather armor each, allowing us to repair our own set, which was practically falling apart. Repair has gotten a slight change from Fallout 3, but it ended up having a massive impact. Instead of only being able to repair items to whatever your current repair skill was, now you can repair items to max regardless of your skill. This can be used to very severely break the game's economy, as we'll find out later. And really, that's all we're gonna need to defend the town. Easy Pete's dynamite is worthless to us, as we are awful with explosives, and we don't really need any more stim packs from the dock. So we can return to Ringo and let the fight begin. All up, there's 6 goons in total, Cobb included. Cobb himself is a ratty bastard, employing a stealth boy when the fighting gets too tough. Still goes down easy enough, even with our pitiful early game weapons. The 9mm pistol you start with is pretty bad at most things, besides being the first gun you get your hands on at the start of the game. The varmint rifle fares a little bit better, seeing as its longer range makes it a little bit more useful for sniping, and the added benefit of being able to have a silencer mod makes it useful for stealth purposes. Still, the Powderganger stood basically no chance. Ringo rewards us for the favor, giving us a small bounty of caps for our trouble. Oh yeah, money in this game takes the form of bottle caps, both from the eponymous Nuka-Cola and the new regional Sunset Sarsaparilla soda. Oh, and Sunset Sarsaparilla will play a comically large role in this game, even if it's really only for a few niche side quests. You'll see. Either way, with our good deed done, we can walk out into the waste, only to be prompted if we'd like to change our skills one last time. And this is where I'm going to give you one final spoiler warning. What I've shown you here is a fraction of what this game has to offer, and despite that, the game has already played a hand that basically tells you everything you need to know about it. Without even leaving the boundaries of the town of Good Springs, we've already learned about many of the major RPG elements. The factions, the combat, skill checks, crafting, it's all here in a microcosm. And despite all of that, I haven't covered everything in Good Springs. Like I said earlier, you can side with the Powder Gangers and shake Good Springs down for all that it's worth if you really want to. Or fuck it, just kill everybody. No character in this game is truly essential, well, save for one that we're going to be getting to much later on. But if you want to be a true psycho killer and murder everyone you see, the game literally just lets you do that. Of course, there are repercussions, but if you're determined enough, hey, it's entirely possible. Anyways, going back to that whole spoilers thing, this is it. Go play the game or have the first, third of the game's content spoiled for you. Still here? Well, alright then. When rebuilding my character, the only thing I changed is swapping barter for lockpicking. Again, probably not the best choice. Unarmed or repair honestly would have made more sense for the build, but lockpicking isn't a necessarily bad skill. I also level up for the first time. Unlike Fallout 3, you can only get a new perk every other level, so even with the higher level cap provided by having all of the DLCs, you can only take 25 perks. For my first perk, I take Confirmed Bachelor. Besides giving you an extra plus 10% damage against dudes, you also get special dialogue options with certain characters across the game. I preferred over the female equivalent Lady Killer, primarily because of the fact that the 10% damage boost against dudes is like 90% more useful because there are far more men enemies in this game than women. Oh yeah, this perk also makes you canonically gay, so that's cool. What the hell was I talking about before? Oh yeah, we're heading out of town now. Our main and really only goal as of right now is tracking down the man that shot us, Benny, and his posse. But before doing any of that, I decided to do a little sightseeing to get some supplies. Mainly some more ammunition and stim packs, but also this little star bottle cap thing. Oh, if you're wondering where I got this cool revolver too, I stole it from Trudy at the Prospector Saloon. It's a step up in damage from the 9mm, even using 38 special ammunition, and it also lets us roleplay as a certain Arizona Ranger with the big iron on his hip. After heading down the road from Good Springs, we can find that all of the nearby Powder Ganger encampments have become hostile. Wonder why that is. The nearby crossroads here presents us with two very different paths. Obviously, Benny probably went right back to the Vegas Strip, meaning that taking the direct path through Quarry Junction would be the quickest way to go. But that right there is a noob trap. You see, Quarry Junction has a bit of a Deathclaw problem, and if you don't know what a Deathclaw is, well, look at the two halves of the creature's name and infer that they are not exactly friendly. And after the free Powder Ganger labor that mined the quarry decided to revolt and cause a big ruckus, a whole fucking pack of them decided to saunter in and started nesting there. So now there's probably a dozen plus Deathclaws, including an alpha male and a Deathclaw mother. Oh, and these aren't the weak, shitty, pissant Deathclaws from Fallout 3. No, these guys are proper apex predators. They can fuck you up. Even later on in the game when you get better weapons and equipment, this place is still a gigantic task to take care of. It is doable at this stage in the game, but just be prepared to have your insides rearranged by a 9-foot-tall bipedal shredded crocodile thing. I still decide to mosey around the junction for a little while, mainly so I can get some free XP and repairing the generator and getting some easy loot and caps. But after that, I turned right back around. The other option is what the game likely intended for first-time players. Heading south will take you to the town of Prim, another casino town. Smaller than Vegas, of course, but it still pulls in a decent amount of traction. Well, that was when it wasn't being inhabited by a bunch of escaped convicts from the NCRCF. These guys are an offshoot from the Powder Gangers, but hostile all the same. For a while, the NCR did manage to hold the town, but the combination of being undersupplied and having to deal with swaths of escaped convicts from the nearby prison forced them back to the outskirts. This is our first interaction with the NCR, and these guys are easily the saddest chapter in the entire game. Under-equipped, small in number, using crappy weapons, I mean, it's just depressing. The convicts have also killed the town sheriff and kidnapped the deputy. So if we decide that we want to help this rinky-dink little settlement, we have our work cut out for us. What's left of the townfolk is holed up in the Vicky and Vance casino. This man is Johnson Nash, local trader and effectively the only important person in town, at least from a metagame sense. He runs the local Mojave Express outpost, the same delivery company we worked for before, well, you know. Anyways, if we show him our delivery order, he can give us a few more details. Apparently the whole thing stank of foul play. The cowboy robot Victor apparently hired him to find 6 couriers to deliver various trinkets across the wasteland. Chess pieces, a pair of dice, that sort of thing. From what he knows, all of the other deliveries made it and had been paid out. On top of this, we weren't the only guy initially hired to be courier number 6. The first guy they hired must have known us, because as soon as he saw our name on the list, he dropped out. Said something about us being meant to carry the burden or whatever. When we ask about our friend in the checkered coat, he says that the town deputy would know more about that. Only problem being that he's, currently being held prisoner by the convicts. And they're all holed up in the Bison Steve Hotel across the street. If we want to pick his brains, we'll have to go in and save his ass. So I go and do that. Not before heading into the back office and stealing a pair of spiked brass knuckles, though. A huge upgrade over the nothing that we had before in terms of unarmed weapons. Unarmed combat in this game is honestly kind of fucked. In previous games it took a backseat to melee weapons, the poster child for low-tech combat. Generally, you'd only have a few options, starting with your bare hands and ending with the classic power fist, with brass knuckles landing somewhere in between. In Fallout 2, you could perform special martial arts moves with enough points invested into unarmed. You could also just hit people in the head with rocks if that was more your thing.
The minute his head is in view, hit it with the rock!
I was gonna put the Star Trek clip in here, but I figured this was more fitting. But in New Vegas, unarmed got a massive overhaul. There is a much greater variety of unarmed weapons, ranging from wrist-mounted shotguns to saw blade hands, although the latter of those two comes from the DLC. Special moves also make a comeback after their absence from 3, although instead of them being tied to your raw unarmed skill, you have to... well, we'll get to it, it's kinda complicated. Anyways, with our new toy, I decide to raid the Bison Steve. By climbing up the roller coaster around the back, we can head into the otherwise unreachable second floor exit, allowing us to get the drops on the convicts inside. The tight passageways of the hotel give me a perfect opportunity to break in that pair of brass knuckles we got. The hotel section also has better loot, save for one thing we'll be getting into much later on. Case in point, this cowboy repeater I find in a locked weapons cabinet. A notable improvement over our varmint rifle, although that weapon still has its place. Doubly so since I bought a scope for it some time ago, I don't really remember when. Knocking out the second floor now makes getting through the building a whole lot easier, as the first floor is far less packed. The deputy is just kinda tucked away in the kitchen. He agrees to help us out if we free him, and lacking the speech skill to convince him otherwise, I have no choice but to agree with him here. On my way out, I grab a Tales of a Junktown Jerky Vendor skill book, which raises my barter skill by 4 points. That being a permanent 4-point boost. Originally it was only a 3-point boost, but last level I grabbed the Comprehension perk, one that I only recently started taking. And yes, even like 500 hours into my Fallout New Vegas career, I'm still finding out new things about it. It makes every skill book give you a permanent extra point, and all skill magazines give you an extra 10 points. This makes rushing certain items early on much easier, since you can reach some pretty high skill checks without all of the investment. In the end though, the deputy and I made it out of the Bison Steve in one piece. He thanks us and tells us all that he knows, which is basically nothing. He saw our friends come through, and then saw them leave down the road to Nipton, presuming that they're also taking the long way around to the Strip. Anyways, we could just leave Prim behind and make a beeline for Nipton, but I decide to help the deputy here. The town needs a new sheriff. Beagle says that we have effectively 2 options. Either A, get the NCR down the street to get up off their asses and help out the town, or B, head to the NCRCF and recruit someone from there. Apparently Beagle knows of an incarcerated former lawman who might fit the bill. Seeing as my relationship with the Powder Gangers is currently in the toilet, I think the NCR makes more sense. The on-site NCR lieutenant says that he'd be happy to help, but he can't. They'll need more reinforcements from the Mojave outpost if they want any chance of securing the town. So that's where I decide to go next. It's not entirely out of the way since it's on the road to Nipton. Before that, I decide to head back to Good Springs to sell some things. Shops restock every 2 to 3 days, so we'll just have to sit here and wait.
Hello there. It's good to see a friendly face.
And then this guy just shows out of nowhere and starts chatting us up in the middle of the night. Apparently he's been following us for a while now. Okay, a little creepy, but whatever. Says he saw us pick up a few of those strange star bottle caps, and we have. Malcolm says that these things come from old bottles of Sunset Sarsaparilla, and that they're part of some kind of treasure hunt? I don't really know, I don't pay attention here. Really, I just wanted to kill him so I could take his star caps. If you couldn't have gathered by now, yes, these star caps will actually lead to some kind of treasure eventually. Problem being, we'll need at least 50 of them, although you definitely won't know that on your first playthrough. The quest won't actually start until you actually get to a location way later in the game. But after doing some trading and heading back to Prim, we can begin heading towards the Mojave outpost. Of course, I do a little sightseeing here and there, raiding a coyote den, clearing out the patrol station of Viper gang members, and killing some rad scorpions at the rest stop. All in a day's work, of course. But once we reach the outpost, we're greeted by a monument celebrating the merging of the NCR Rangers and the Desert Rangers. The Desert Rangers are the guys who wear the cool ride armor, and exist on every piece of New Vegas publicity material. In the past, the Desert Rangers, realizing that they were kind of fucked against the Legion if they stood alone, decided to buddy up with the NCR, and the rest is history. History that we'll be getting to much later on, and yes, I know I've said that like 6 times now, but this video only covers a small portion of the game. Eventually it'll all make sense, just trust me. Anyways, we're here on a mission. If we pass a simple barter check, we can convince Knight to send the troops to Prim, but I have other plans. By using the confirmed bachelor perk, we can get him to open up a bit. This dialogue has nothing to do with the actual story involved here, but I figured it's worth mentioning for lore reasons. Major Knight identifies as homosexual, something that's accepted enough back in NCR home territory, but not as much here in the Mojave. Oddly enough, the Legion seems more forgiving towards these relationships, but then again they do also hate women, so I guess it all kinda balances out. Either way, this will give us a discount on Major Knight's repair services. He can repair any of our gear up to 100%, and after passing this perk check, he'll give us a little discount. But back to that whole Prim debacle. After passing the 20 barter check, we can get him to send troops to Prim. Although, if we want them to actually show up, we need to speak with Hayes. This gives me an opportunity to do what I actually want to do, but more on that in a sec. We have more business in the outpost, though. By speaking with Ranger Jackson, we can get a job to kill some ants down by the Nipton rest stop. Their presence has prevented trade caravans from leaving the outpost. It's a simple affair, fast travel there and beat a bunch of ants to death. We don't get a conventional reward for this job. Instead, Jackson supplies us with a standard NCR trooper kit, minus the armor. Some weapon repair kits, a few caravan lunches, but most importantly, a service rifle and a bunch of armor-piercing 5.56 ammo. The service rifle is kind of mediocre as a weapon, although I am a sucker for a Vietnam-era-esque AR-15 rifle, so begrudgingly I do get some use out of it. The armor-piercing ammo, on the other hand, will be useful for other reasons, though. We can also get one more job here at the outpost. Ranger Ghost wants us to head down to Nipton as she's paranoid about the smoke trails coming from the town. Seeing as we're going to be heading that way anyways, I see no reason why not. But the problem of Prim still remains. We could just hand over the town to the NCR, but I'd rather keep the town truly independent. And the only way to do that requires a little bit of preparation, specifically a science skill of 30. With that, we can reprogram the game's second robot cowboy, Prim Slim, into being the town sheriff. I'm not entirely sure why this casino robot has a law enforcement protocol, but fuck it, I'm not gonna argue. Have at it, Prim Slim. Upon the completion of this quest, I level up to level 6, granting me my third perk. I ended up settling on Toughness, which permanently increases our damage threshold by 3, forever. Not a crazy boost, but considering I plan on wearing light armor for most of the playthrough, it's well worth it. Either way, this marks the end of our involvement with Prim, and now we can resume our search for the man in the checkered coat. Not much happens on our way to Nipton, though, besides a few scrapes with some wasteland fauna and a few more raiders.
Yeah! Who won the lottery? I did! Smell that air! Couldn't you just drink it like booze? Watch out!
Wonder what his deal is. So yeah, the Legion came and burned Nipton to the ground, and that's not great. This means that the Legion is effectively operating in the NCR's backyard. I mean, hell, the Mojave outpost is literally a stone's throw up the road. Worst part about it is that this is just a small expeditionary force. Vulpus and Colta, the leader of this expedition, rambles on about cleaning up the town and whatever, and frankly, you know, just fuck the Legion, they kinda suck. All of the Fallout incels can say whatever they want about the Legion being based or whatever, but I just don't care. My Courier 6 just wants to grill some goddamn rat scorpions. I honestly couldn't care less about any of this politics crap. And yeah, if you couldn't tell, we're probably not going to be siding with the Legion for this playthrough. With all of that being said though, being buddy-buddy with the fascist Roman cosplayers will be beneficial to us in the long run, so I choose to heartlessly agree with what Vulpus has to say here to get the most Legion rep possible. He will be getting his though, I assure you. With all of that out of the way, I decide to do a little bit of sightseeing before heading back to the outpost. When we tell Ranger Ghost that everyone in Nipton got fucking steamrolled by the Legion, she's rightly a little worried, but whatever. As long as I get that sweet experience, I don't really care. After this, I head back to Nipton to do a little bit more snooping around in the town hall building. This is where the majority of the lottery auctioning took place. The Legion rolled in and set up a so-called lottery to deal with the town. And just like the short story of the same name, this lottery was not something you really wanted to win. A wide array of punishments were handed out to the citizens of Nipton. The lucky ones died quickly, but most had to suffer drawn-out fates. Boxcars here, who managed to snag second place, got his legs obliterated by a sledgehammer. Oliver Swanwick, who we met earlier, managed to score himself first place, and as a reward was the only one allowed to walk free. Anyways, the small town has some pretty great loot for the early game. A big book of science being one of the biggest grabs, as it can permanently boost our science skill by 4 points. By using a lockpick magazine I came across a while back, we can pick the lock on the door to the back room and get even more loot. And, if you're quick, you can run down to one of the other houses and pick the lock on a safe for even more loot. Having the sprint module from Just Assorted Mods makes this a hell of a lot easier. The road from here to Novak is a long one, and a treacherous one at that. To start, a Viper gang ambushes us on these cliffs, followed by another one buried deep in the mountains, and there's actually a third one by this abandoned homestead with some pretty good loot. On my way down the road, I noticed smoke rising in the distance, and this led me to, would you believe it, the Legion safe house. We can't get in, yet, as the key is locked behind being friendly with the Legion. We're not at a high enough reputation with them for them to, give us the key, but I'm not content with leaving empty-handed. The Legion recruits patrolling here all carry hunting rifles, a powerful weapon for this stage in the game. By activating the stealth boy we got from the safe in Goodsprings, we can kill all of them and steal their weapons, all without acquiring the ire of the Legion. The hunting rifle is a massive improvement over our varmint rifle, even without a scope. It boasts a far higher damage across the board, and is also substantially more accurate. It can also be upgraded with a scope, as well as an extended magazine and a greased bolt that makes it fire faster. But even now, in its base form, it's still a pretty solid weapon. For right now, we head further down the road, eventually coming upon Camp Searchlight. This settlement was another that was viciously attacked by the Legion. They cleared it out and set off some kind of radiation bomb that wiped out pretty much everyone in the settlement. Now, the whole place is infested with ghouls, although that hasn't stopped people from trying to scavenge the town. Take Logan and his bunch here. Now, these guys can start a quest in which you explore a few of the areas around Camp Searchlight. It's safe to say I don't partake in that quest. I love how this ghoul just wanders in mid-fight to kill everyone, it's hilarious. The reinforced leather armor his buddies were wearing will look far better on us anyways. Besides, if we want to loot any of the places attached to the quest, Logan has the keys on his corpse, so we're not locked out of any unique content per se. Either way, back to the road. Besides stopping to clear out another Viper encampment and grabbing an item for a quest later on, the rest of the journey is pretty straightforward. I do level up to level 8 though, allowing me to grab my 4th perk. I take Strong back. It's basically just a direct carry weight increase. Since I'm a bit of a hoarder, it makes sense in my head. Dinky the dinosaur is a real-life tourist attraction in Nevada. I don't know how accurate this representation of him is to a T, but I think the developers did a pretty good job. What is fictional though is the gift shop run by Cliff Briscoe. We inquire about our friend in the checkered suit, and he tells us to speak with Manny Vargas, one of the town's watchmen. He takes up a sniper position in the mouth of the dinosaur, at least during the day shift. We can also trade with Cliff, and he's actually not a half-bad merchant. On top of the souvenirs for Dinky the dinosaur and the rockets from the nearby Repcon test site, he can also sell some properly rare stuff, namely that gun, one of the best early-game weapons for a guns build. Problem is, I'm not keen on spending a bunch of caps on it, so I wait for nightfall and sneak into the back room to steal it. I do also buy a nice power fist though, specifically one from the Gunrunner's Arsenal add-on, which has the benefit of being able to attach several weapon mods over the standard version. Anyways, that gun is a very solid gun, effectively a replacement for our old varmint rifle. Besides doing good crit damage and looking really cool, it also has the benefit of using 5.56 ammo, which makes it one of the only handguns in the game capable of using armor-piercing rounds. Its name could either be a reference to a weapon of the same type from Fallout 1, or a reference to the gun that Harrison Ford carries in Blade Runner. It does work pretty well against robots, so I guess it fits. Either way, let's go speak with Manny.
Sure, I know him. What do you want with him? You talking about that chip? Man, I don't think he's giving it up. Well, listen, I can definitely help you find him, but I've got problems of my own.
But he's willing to make a trade. I'm not, however, so I just bullshit him with a confirmed bachelor perk and effectively skip an entire quest. I'm kidding, of course. I'm still gonna do Come Fly With Me, but that comes later. Manny tells us that our friend went up the road to Boulder City. Seeing as it's the only sensible way out of town, I'm not entirely sure what we needed to ask Manny about that, but I digress. I still decided to inquire with him about his little problem, though. And this is how we can start a pretty sizable early game quest. You see, Manny has been noticing a disturbingly large number of ghouls migrating down the road from the Repcon test site, and he wants us to check the place out, see if we can solve the ghoul problem. Sounds like a blast, but I'll be putting that on the back burner, as we have other business in this region. So you remember the Powder Gangers? Yeah, they're still, unfortunately, poking around, although that's about to change. For the worse. For them, anyways. The vast majority of what's left are holed up on the NCRCF. The place is a fortress, but seeing as I'm not the kind of guy to leave a job half-finished, yeah, these guys have to go. The prison is heavily guarded, with sentries in the watchtowers at all hours of the night. This is where I make one of the last good uses of the silenced varmint rifle, helping to silently clear out the night watch, along with a few of the convicts patrolling the interior. After that, I just storm the place, take some drugs, and use my power fist and just beat everyone to death. Despite the fact that we're pretty over-leveled doing this, we're still only a glass cannon. The power fist puts in some good work, but our crappy armor and mediocre health can land us in some hot shit if not kept in check. With that being said, this first building is a breeze. If we decided to pick the former convict as a sheriff for Prim, this is where he'd be. I mean, he's still here, it's not like he, disappeared or something. He's also not hostile to us, so that's cool. Either way, the rest of the prison is mostly a breeze. Cell blocks A and B are pretty quiet, and the yard is already mostly clear thanks to our varmint rifle. But the real shit starts when we enter the admin building. They don't all attack immediately, maybe because they were asleep, but I don't know. It's all just a haze of mist slugs and lasers, it's kinda hard to tell. But in the end, everyone but me ended up dead and I got a cool pair of sunglasses, as well as a fuck ton of ammo and free healing supplies. With that loose end tied up, it's back to Novak for one last thing. A former NCR ranger named Andy resides here. He was taken out of commission by Legion ambush. Well, in a sense anyways.
I turn around and there's this kid, just skin and bone, and he's looking up at us and he's scared half to death. Been hiding in a closet. I go to grab him out of there and I notice he's holding something in his hand. Something metal. He shuts himself back in the closet, and that's when I see the grenade he's left by my feet.
He's been resentfully camping here in Novak while he's been healing, feeling utterly useless due to his fucked up leg. If we pass a speech check though, we can not only help him out of his mental funk, but also gain a special reward. NCR Rangers are skilled in hand-to-hand combat, and they have a special technique called the Ranger Takedown, effectively a really flashy leg sweep. By passing the speech check, Andy can teach us this trick free of charge. It's not terribly useful due to the fact that it's kind of hard to activate, but if you don't end up taking a bunch of melee-centric perks, it could prove to be useful. Regardless, that's it for this stint in Novak. We have business elsewhere, namely an NCR-controlled solar power plant. This is Helios 1. The NCR are only really here since they managed to kick out the small Brotherhood party that was here before them. You know the Brotherhood, right? The poster childs of Bethesda-driven Fallout, excluding New Vegas, of course. Either way, since the battle, their presence in the region has diminished significantly. But to keep the NCR away from the valuable technology within, they deactivated what they could and turned on an old security system, which has ground any of the NCR's progress to a halt. We can offer to help out the NCR here, and the lieutenant points us to the idiot in sunglasses, quote-unquote. Doesn't sound very promising. Before speaking with him, make sure to grab the terminal passwords, that'll be important very soon. Ah, this must be the guy.
Who the hell are you? They bring you in to replace me? They're replacing me, aren't they?
You know what, I think the lieutenant was right. Dr. Fantastic here is a complete joke. He bullshitted his way into the NCR ranks and hasn't managed to do a damn thing since then. But seeing as we're here, he pawns all of his hard work onto us. We have to retarget the mirrors and get them to link up with the mainframe in the tower. Then you could reroute power to wherever district of Vegas you'd like. Sounds like a pain, considering the now active security systems, but I think we can manage. Frankly, as long as I can get away with this guy, I think I'll be fine. In the other room, thankfully, is a real doctor. At least I think so anyways. Ignacio here is an aide to Fantastic, and like any sensible person, agrees that he's doing fuck all. He's also a member of the Followers of the Apocalypse, an organization founded in post-nuclear California. At their core, they're a bunch of anarchistic wasteland doctors, who set out to heal the sick as best they could while keeping a neutral stance. Pretty cool bunch. This makes it all the easier to be more inclined to listen to him. And he tells me to do what Fantastic said basically, but route the power to a more reasonable place. Fantastic wants the power to go to the Strip and Camp McCarran, the latter of which being a major NCR military base and an airfield. Ignacio wants us to take a more charitable approach. Send the power where it's needed. Of course, the choice is ours, but it's a good thing to keep in mind. Either way, we have a lot of work to do, so I get to it. First comes retargeting the mirrors, which is as easy as interacting with two terminals. While I'm out here, I also scavenge for solar panel array parts. These will come in handy for a quest we'll be doing much later on. After the two terminals have been synced up, it's time to head inside the tower. This is when we encounter our first robotic security measures. Nothing too crazy, just a few turrets and some robo-brains. I make pretty good use out of that gun here, as it can be used to further the benefit or hazard challenge, another Blade Runner reference. Oh shit, I forgot to talk about challenges. They're like mini side quests that require you usually to kill specific enemies with certain weapons. These can range from pretty straightforward, like killing 15 robots with a 5.56 pistol, to genuinely challenging, like killing a bunch of Deathclaws with boxing tape. A bunch of these were added in the Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC, which added 3 tiers of challenges, each increasing in difficulty. Anyways, back to the solar array. The rest of the building is pretty easy to clear, so I'll skip to the end when we're given the choice of choosing where to send the power. I choose to divert power to Fremont's and Westside, two of the more impoverished regions in the game. But of course, that's not the only option. We can stay true to Fantastic and send it to McCarran on the Strip, we can divert power to the grid, or we can just destroy the plant and activate the self-destruct. Or, curiously, we can also activate Archimedes too. Now, spoiler warning, this is a piece of content that I didn't explore in this playthrough, so I'll just give you the full rundown now. Archimedes is a weapons program started by the Poseidon Energy Company, the organization who owned the plant. While the NCR didn't know about it, the Brotherhood was privy to its existence, although they really didn't know exactly how it worked, beyond needing a rangefinder that they just didn't have. So yeah, the Brotherhood missed out on getting a cool space laser. Oh, I guess I kinda spoiled the fun now, didn't I? Oh well, you still don't know where the rangefinder is, so have fun. Anyways, I head up to the platform and activate the array. The light is blinding, but it's a sign of a job well done. I'm not walking all the way back down through that building, that shit takes too damn long. Ignacio is pleased with our choice and rewards us with some free medical supplies, as well as some rep with the followers of the apocalypse. Something that'll be useful very, very soon. With all of this out of the way, let's start making our way over to the rep contest site to clear out all of those ghouls. The place is just down the road from Novak, and right off the bat, things are not good. It's clear that there is a very substantial feral ghoul problem. We have to fight like 9 or 10 of them before we can even get into the place. But worse is the apparent presence of Nightkin, a particular breed of super mutant. For those who don't know what a super mutant is, well, they're basically the classic tropey Fallout mutant. Tall, green skin, usually pretty stupid, well, usually anyways. The first thing you'd probably think of, though, when you hear radioactive mutant. The story is actually far more complicated than that. Hell, super mutants aren't even spawned from exposure to radiation. They were genetically engineered in a military base in California. If you want the whole story, I'd recommend you go and watch my video on Fallout 1. And I promise that's my last self-plug in this entire video, just trust me on that. Anyways, the ghouls don't prove to be too much of a threat. The hunting rifle that we borrowed from the Legion, though, certainly comes in handy. When we get inside, we're contacted on the radio by a non-feral ghoul over the intercom. He seems peeved by our presence, but admits that he and his buddies need our help. We need to huff it across the building and meet them in the upstairs lab for further details. Somewhere around here is when I reach level 10 as well. This is a crucial one, as it lets me take one of the finest perks in the game, Finesse, which is basically a direct boost to our critical hit chance, equal to an extra 5 points in luck. A no-brainer for sure. The rep contest site is a sprawling building though, and there is plenty of good loot to be found. All of the dead ghoul followers here carry energy weapons that can be repaired and sold for a ton of early game money. On top of that, there's also a bunch of components here for crafting weapon repair kits. Oh yeah, I kinda did forget to talk about crafting. There are technically 3 different crafting systems. A standard workbench, for creating miscellaneous items and energy weapons ammo. You can actually craft ammunition types that can't be found anywhere else in the game world, which keeps recycling useful even into the endgame. A reloading bench for crafting ammunition for firearms. This also lets you craft a bunch of unique ammunition types, like 5.56 match ammo, one of my personal favorites. And lastly, the campfire, which is basically a do-it-all cooking station. If you have any need to make food or purify water, this is where you do it. It also allows you to craft chems, which is a little odd, seeing as there's already a fully modeled chemistry set that would make far more sense for this purpose, but I digress. Anyways, the rest of the RepCon facility is just a gauntlet of ferals, so I'll skip to the very end. When we reach the upstairs, we can find this guy, who's not a ghoul. I think he's just a little crazy. He directs us to his leader, though, Jason Bright, one of a small number of sentient glowing ones in the entire series. He tells us that they'd be happy to leave, but their desired exit is going through the basement, which is full of the Nightkin. The demons, as he calls them. They aren't actually demons, but considering the fact that they are big, giant indigo men that can go invisible, I'd say that it's not really all that far off. If we can clear out the basement, he'll get his flock to leave. Sounds like a deal. Now, there are a few ways of doing this. Of course, the simplest solution is just to run down there and kill everything, but that is really just a waste of ammo and healing items. There's a much easier and surprisingly peaceful option to take. By simply running to the Nightkin leader, we can initiate dialogue. You see, the Nightkin are kind of addicted to the Stealth Boys, the Stealth Boys being the reason that they can turn invisible. It does, really significantly fuck with their brains, but that's a topic for later. Anyways, Davison led this group here as there was apparently a shipment of Stealth Boys sent here. If we can find proof otherwise, he and his flock will leave. Now, this is obviously easier said than done, though. The terminal with the invoice we need is being guarded by this lovely ghoul, who isn't just keen on letting us walk up there for free. He wants a favor. Go and find his friend, and he'll leave. She was taken hostage by the Nightkin and should be somewhere in the basement with us. I'm not entirely sure what about the Nightkin made this guy think that they're the type to take hostages, but yeah, she's very obviously dead. So, he leaves, and we can download the invoice to prove that Davison brought everyone here on false pretenses. So, he begrudgingly leads everyone out, starting phase 3 of this quest. Yeah, this one's a long one. In short, Jason wants to take his followers far, far away from the Mojave, using these giant fucking cartoon rockets. Sounds pretty ridiculous, but hey, at least he's aspiring for something that isn't the eradication of another faction, and in the Mojave that's pretty rare. There are a few problems with this plan. Well, besides the foundation of it, which is already pretty silly. The rockets don't even have everything they need to launch. We need a jar of a special isotope and a flight control module. Now, if you remember correctly, we picked up the jar of the isotope a while back, but the flight control module, yeah, no dice. Luckily, it's easy enough to find. Just head down to the Gibson scrapyard and steal it from the locked crate in the garage. You could trade with Old Lady Gibson for it out front, but you won't be able to get the dialogue to do so until now. So, when Chris asks us for all of the stuff, we can just speed through his dialogue and finish it in seconds. After that, it's just a matter of sitting through Jason's speech and heading up to the launch control panel. You could be really evil and set the rockets to crash into each other, but I don't have a high enough science skill to pull that off. And really, the likelihood of them getting far in these things is pretty slim to begin with. But regardless, we launch the rockets and watch them fly off into the unknown. While some have speculated that they're actually going to space, I like to think that they're actually going to the Necropolis, a location from Fallout 1. That place was basically a giant bombed-out irradiated city that had a very high ghoul population. Perfect fit for these guys. But with our job done, this concludes our work for Manny Vargas. Since we already got the information we needed, this is really only just a way to get us some more positive rep with Novak, which is a nice bonus, but it's not enough. No, I want a real reward, and Manny is going to be the guy to give it to me. Seems a little cruel to kill a man just for his hat, but trust me, this is incredibly worth it. The first recon beret is easily one of the best pieces of headwear in the entire game, primarily because of its stat bonus. It gives plus 5 critical hit chance. For reference, that's equivalent to 5 extra points of luck, just like the finesse perk. So yeah, once I get this thing, I don't take it off until the game practically has to pry it off my head. But with our arsenal as good as it's going to get for a while, and our first target in sight, we head down the road to Boulder City, ready for a fight. Hey, that kind of rhymed. Anyways. The trek up the road to Boulder City is rather uneventful. Besides a few raiders, some large fire-breathing ants, and marking a few new locations on the map, things are pretty quiet. Things are extra quiet when we actually arrive in town. The place has been effectively reduced to a pile of smoldering ruins. This is a result of the First Battle of Hoover Dam, when the NCR rigged the town with explosives and effectively used it as a bait for the Legion, who followed the retreating NCR. And, as the NCR hoped, the Legion followed and got pummeled, swinging the battle in the NCR's favor. Regardless, we're not here for a history lesson, but we're here to find someone. Outside the main ruins, we're stopped by NCR Lieutenant Monroe, who says that he's dealing with a bit of a hostage situation right now between his troops and a group of Great Khans. The Khans are a major raider faction in the Mojave. Well, formerly major, anyways. We'll get to why that is in a bit. You may recognize them as the same faction of goon who accompanied Benny at the beginning of the game. Or you recognize them from Fallout 1 because you're a fucking turbo nerd. I mean, I am too, so I guess I really can't throw shade there. And what do you know? Those specific Khans just so happen to be here. Monroe agrees to let us go in there and deal with the Khans as long as we can get his boys out. Sounds hard, but it boils down to just running in and passing an easy speech check with Jessup. If you're wondering where the other guy is, yeah, he's dead. Not important. What is important is the fact that in exchange for getting Jessup and his Khans out in one piece, he gives us Benny's distinctive cigarette lighter. Could come in handy. After that, we return to Monroe, who agrees to let the Khans go, not only giving us a massive karma boost, but also bumping us up to accepted reputation with the Great Khans and the NCR. With the first of our loose ends tied up, we can begin heading towards the Strip. Remember, the whole purpose we even took this route was because we couldn't brute force our way through Quarry Junction. On our way out of Boulder City, though, we're stopped by a familiar face. Victor, who has somehow managed to track us through the desert to Boulder City. A little creepy, but I suppose it's nice to see a familiar video screen around these parts. Either way, all we have to do now is head towards the Strip. Should be easy, right? Right? The first place I hit on my travels is the 188 Trading Post. This place has a few decent merchants that'll supply us for quite a while, namely Alexander, who works for the Gunrunners. The Gunrunners are a major trading entity in the post-nuclear West, being the most reputable source of quality firearms. They use pre-war schematics and manufacturing techniques to make as good of a product as possible. This firearm elitism shines through in Alexander's apprehension and initially talking to us. After passing a simple skill check, he backs off though, allowing us to access his services as a merchant. He has some pretty good stuff, all kinds of ammunition, high-quality weapons, and a few weapon mods. One of those mods being a scope for my hunting rifle. Makes an already powerful weapon even more useful. He's a good merchant for sure, but he'll soon be outclassed by another merchant, ironically working for the same company. Regardless, the second place I hit on my path to the Strip is the RepCon headquarters. This place has some good loot, but it's locked behind some pretty hefty skill checks. Luckily for me though, I had all the requisite skills, for the most part, and so this area was pretty negligible. We're here for a very specific reason though, that being to find this Brotherhood of Steel patrol. Trust me, it will be important probably in 2 videos. Either way, there is another cool thing we can grab here, that being a unique plasma rifle. I'm not really one for unique energy weapons, I don't really, use them because I like guns more, but I do like collecting unique weapons, so this does have a place in my arsenal, even if it just sits in my safe at the Novak hotel room. I got that motel room by having a high enough reputation with Novak. By helping out Manny with his quest, we get the key for free. The next stop for me is Camp McCarran, the NCR's largest military base in the Mojave. The problem is, it's on the fringes of Fiend territory. The Fiends aren't like any of the other minor raider factions factions we've been facing thus far. These guys are tight-knit, almost organized at times, and despite being a minor threat on their own, they make up for it with strength in numbers. They've especially been a thorn in the NCR's side, seeing as one of their main operational hubs is right on the edges of their territory. And they are relentless. Despite being pushed back time and time again, they just keep coming back. Obviously, they're hostile to us on sight, and at this stage we're still a little under-equipped to deal with them head-on, but a few isn't bad. Thankfully, the outside of Camp McCarran is pretty safe. I also reached level 12 here, which means it's time for another perk. This time I couldn't think of anything super major, so I picked Intense Training and threw another point into Intelligence. Free skill points for me. Anyways, we're not going into Camp McCarran just yet, as we have business elsewhere. Namely the main Gunrunners outpost in the Mojave. This place not only acts as the Mojave branch's main manufacturing center, but also as a merchant location. By speaking to this creatively named Vendortron, we can directly trade with it, and it's easily one of the best merchants in the game. Incredible quality firearms, weapon mods, and ammunition of all types. With the Gunrunners Arsenal DLC installed, there are also several unique weapons that you can buy here. Very powerful unique weapons. Yeah, we're going to be coming back here and spending a lot of money. That will come in due time, though. And now I have another mission. I want another unique weapon, and this one is going to be a little harder to get than picking a very easy lock. I need to pick a hard lock. I know, really challenging. And for our incapable ass, it is. Our lockpicking skill is only at 55, so we need another 20 points before we can even think about cracking that lock. Luckily for us, we can use our wits and this cool locksmithing magazine I found to crack the safe. The safe we need is in the back of the Bison Steve in Prim. I told you we'd be back here. And by reading that magazine with the comprehension perk and popping some mentats, we can crack the lock. And inside is one of the best handguns in the game, Lucky, the unique 357 Magnum revolver. Boasting higher crit chance, damage, and a substantially better overall appearance, it makes an invaluable addition to our arsenal. And it sees service well into the late game. It, alongside our current gear and this combat armor lifted from these 2 dead Goombas near the Gunrunners, will be more than enough to start our career as a bounty hunter. Back at Camp McCarran, we can speak with Major Daughtry to start the 3-card bounty quest line. To put it simply, he wants us to go and take out 3 important fiend bounties and bring back their heads intact, for proof of death and proper ID. Even with our good equipment, this is no small task. Each bounty is supported by at least a squad of fiends, with another dozen roaming the wastes nearby. We'll have to fight tooth and nail to kill these guys. First on the chopping block is Cook, Fiend Admiral, Rapist, and surprisingly good chef. He's not too much of a drag, as he's easy to overwhelm with melee strikes and some persistence. Next is Violet, who is only notable because of her use of a squad of dogs in combat. She'll sick the fucking pound on your ass if you get too close to her shack. Best thing you can do is pick off the weaker dogs from a distance and then go in for the kill on the main hound and herself. This commotion from the firefight near Violet's camp caused our last target, Driver Nephi, to actually go on the offensive and take us on head to head. I mean, he kinda had to anyways, since he's the only one of the 3 to use a melee weapon in combat. Namely a unique 9-iron, which can be used if you don't break it by shooting it out of his hand. With all 3 heads stinking up the bottom of our bag, we can return to the Major, who is reasonably pleased with our work. With them dead, the first recon can move somewhere else where they're more needed, and everyone else here in the camp can sleep a little easier at night. After another trip to the Gunrunners, I make my way over to another classic Fallout microfaction, the Crimson Caravan. These guys, like the Gunrunners and the Followers of the Apocalypse, also appeared in the first Fallout game, as one of several major trading caravans in California. They have quietly expanded into the Mojave region, and since then have become the biggest trading caravan in the region. Once we're inside, we're ambushed by Ringo of all people, who pays us another chunk of change for our help back in Good Springs. From here on out, though, he resumes being a non-entity. The real shit starts inside the main office. Well, actually not, because I lied. We are really here for what's on the other side of the compound, the New Vegas Medical Clinic. This place is a follower-run operation, which means they can sell us a ton of healing supplies, but more importantly, implants. For the low price of a lot of money, we can boost any of our special stats by 1, or get a few unique ones, like passive regen or a built-in armor plate. For right now, though, I pick a luck, boosting our natural luck stat up to 8. This sets me back 4 big ones, though, so we are in some need of actual work. And there is more to be found over in Camp McCarran, namely helping out with an interrogation. Lieutenant Boyd has a Legion Centurion imprisoned, and for those not in the know, a Centurion is one of the Legion's highest-ranking soldiers, equivalent to a captain or major of sorts. Usually, they kill themselves to prevent capture, but they managed to scoop this one up. She's been unsuccessful in her attempts to coax information out of him peacefully, and the NCR doesn't permit torture, so she's hit a bit of a wall. This is where we come in. Since we are not on the NCR's payroll, we can do whatever we want to this guy. So, we have him, and this is where the game actually tricks you. You're told to beat the shit out of him, but by talking to him and passing a series of hard intelligence and speech checks, you can get more information out of him. By convincing him that we're another Legion spy sent to kill him for his failure, he'll crack and start ranting. Firstly, about Caesar having some kind of, well, headaches. Not necessarily important, for now anyways. And if we continue listening, he'll eventually tell us about the Legion spy that's been planted here, in Camp McCarran. This is no good, he must be dealt with. Let's go deal with him now. We can speak with Colonel Sue downstairs, and he'll give us the quest chain we're looking for. He talks about how lately things have been getting real bad with ambushes, with something happening almost every night. He tells us to report to Captain Curtis, who's been looking into some things. He's a little off, but nothing too crazy. He asks us to see what everyone else knows already. Sounds like something he should have already done, but I digress. The first and only person I ask is Lieutenant Boyd, and she tells us that there have been weird occurrences in one of the radio towers in the wee hours of the morning. She gives us the key in case we want to check the place out. So, I run over, wait until the dead of night, only to overhear someone talking on the radio. Our Legion spy friend, all right.
What's the status of your primary mission, Highness? Charges are set. Detonation will occur as the train leaves the station. Over.
A bomb?
Oh my god, JC, a bomb!
A bomb.
Curtis was, of course, the Legion spy we're looking for. But more importantly, his conversation tips us off about the bomb placed on the NCR's monorail. That monorail is one of the main methods for reaching the Strip, and without it, many troops wouldn't be able to make it there at all. And on top of that, it would have made the NCR just look even more pathetic. So we rush over and defuse the bomb just in the nick of time. After that, we report back to Sue, who is both sad and now paranoid that the rat ended up being someone who had prior worked for the NCR for years, only to turn up as a spy. Still, I suppose it's a job well done, and this is what pushes us over the edge to the second tier of positive rep with the NCR. Okay, I know we've spent like 5 years inside Camp McCarran, but there's one more thing I wanted to hit before we leave. Primarily because we can get a pretty solid rifle out of it. If you head all the way to the back of the concourse, you can find the supply shack, where Daniel Contreras is. He's your typical shady arms merchant type, who only gets to reside on NCR grounds for some reason. Honestly, I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. He's a decent merchant, but frankly, he'd be better off behind bars. So, if we sneak up to his sleeping area, hack his terminal, and then steal his shipping manifest to prove his guilt, we can show Lieutenant Boyd and have him locked up. What she'll give us in return is this machine, which is absolutely one of the finest rifles in the game. You can get it and keep Contreras as a merchant, but it takes far more work and is ultimately far more of a pain. Back to the gun though, it uses the same .308 ammo that our hunting rifle uses, is slightly less accurate, but makes up for it by basically being an M1 Garand. Its name is a play on American folk singer Woody Guthrie's guitar, which was often seen with a sticker saying, "This machine kills fascists." The inscription on this rifle is written almost like a response to that. This machine kills fascists, well this machine kills commies. Besides being a cool nod to music history, it's also just a really solid weapon. Good damage, decent magazine capacity, and reload speed for its caliber. Only really hampered by its, again, higher than average weapon spread. It's also really damn durable too. Either way, with another addition to our arsenal, I think it's time we branch out a little bit. Now that we've exhausted all of our employment options inside Camp McCarran, we can begin branching out to more conventional jobs, like those offered at the Crimson Caravan. Alice McLafferty is a hard ass, but the pay is decent enough, and at the end of the day it's just more XP for us. Our first job is pretty simple. Deliver an invoice to a doctor back at Camp McCarran. Okay, I know we said we were done here, but trust me, this actually leads to a pretty cool quest later on. Dr. Hildern is another quest giver, one that gives us a surprisingly interesting side quest. You see, he's been experimenting with plant growth rates. The NCR obviously needs a huge amount of food to supply their forces and their citizens in the Mojave, and so far the doc has had little success. But to the northeast lies a pre-war vault, one of those built by Vault-Tec. Luscious green plants spill from its doors, and without anyone or anything seen watering them, there must be some secret to their accelerated growth. So, in exchange for getting any of the data stored in the Vault servers, the good doctor will reward us handsomely. Sounds easy enough. From the offset, the place seems abandoned, so I'm sure things can't possibly go that wrong, right? While leaving the doc's office, we're stopped by his assistant, who asks us about the job. She's been working with Hildern for a while, and knows that we're not the first person to be sent out to Vault 22. One of her close friends, a doctor named Keeley, was also sent and has not returned. In exchange for finding her friend, she'll agree to pay us out of her own pocket. Well, I mean, I guess since I'm already going there, it can't be that much harder. Anyways, all of that will come later. For right now, we have to report back to Mrs. McLafferty. Now, she gives us 3 jobs, one of which being optional. Firstly, go into town, that town being Freeside, and get Henry Jameson to quit. He's more interested in spending company profits gambling in the back alley casinos of Freeside, but since he's the son of a wealthy Brahmin rancher, McLafferty has no choice but to put up with him. Second, she wants us to buy out another rival caravan company, Cassidy Caravans. They're only a minor competitor, and after an incident involving the heiress to the entire caravan company, she's been wanting out of the business since then. And lastly, sneak into the gun owner's headquarters and steal a hollow disc with their manufacturing specs on it. Obviously, these new specs would provide the company with an invaluable method of producing high-quality firearms, which, in the apocalypse, might as well be free money. I decided to deal with Jameson first, meaning that we needed to venture into Freeside for the first time. This place is the slum surrounding the actual Vegas Strip, equivalent to the actual Fremont Street in real life. The only way for people to actually get onto the Strip is by getting to the North Gate and passing a $2,000 credit check. This won't remove any of your money, it just checks that you actually have $2,000 in your inventory. Of course, since I've been looting everything I see, I have plenty of money to pass that, but that'll come later. The only reason we're here for right now is to speak with Henry, who is in the only functional casino in Freeside, the Atomic Wrangler. This is the first proper casino you're likely to encounter. Obviously, Prim had two, but neither of them were really functional, so to speak. We're not here to gamble, though. Henry is, unsurprisingly, not chill with quitting his high-paying gig for nothing, but after threatening to rat him out to one of the Strip families, he caves. Next, I decide to break into the Gunrunners. This is harder than you'd think. First step being you have to wait until night, since if you don't, the manufacturing floor inside the main building will be fully staffed, and secondly, there is a full night watch, meaning that if you want to get inside, you'll have to use a stealth boy. Once inside, though, it's pretty straightforward. Hell, there's even some pretty damn good loot in here, too. A few high-condition weapons to sell, a weapon repair kit, even one of those special blue star caps. What we're here for, though, is in the back on this terminal, so not a huge deal. Finally, I decided to deal with Cassidy Caravans. The only surviving member is currently sucking down whiskey at the Mojave Outpost, on the other side of the map. This is Cass. She's actually a very important character for some people. She can be recruited as a permanent companion if you pass a speech check. She has her own entire arc, hers probably being one of the longest in the entire game, spanning multiple entire quests. Personally, I prefer to travel alone, and even when I do go with companions, Cass is rarely my first choice. She's okay, but I find her crassness a little overbearing. But after passing that same speech check, we can get her to agree to the terms offered by McLafferty. I suppose that's all of our work done. Well, not quite. McLafferty can give us one more minor quest. Basically, run over to the Sunset Sarsaparilla bottling plant and destroy a bottle cap press that's been set up by an enterprising businessman. Sounds easy enough, but the plant is deep in fiend territory, so we have our work cut out for us. I do rank up to level 14 though, allowing me to take another perk. This time round, I take Adamantium Skeleton, both because it basically negates any of the problems posed by our small frame trait, and because, as a skeleton myself, I see this as just becoming, a better version of me. Anyways, the hardest part about this quest is just getting to the plant, since I had to contend with about 3 dozen fiends on my way there. Once inside, though, the only thing we have to worry about are some automated security measures. The bottling press is all the way in the back, but exploring the whole place isn't even necessary. I still do though, as we'll be coming back here for a quest much, much later on. With the press out of commission though, our work for the Crimson Caravan is now done. We can move on to, thankfully, a more noble path now. The headquarters for the Followers of the Apocalypse is in Freeside's East District. The old Mormon fort is actually a real place. In reality, it was one of the first settlements of Europeans in what is now modern-day Nevada. The Followers have a pretty large group here, although it's not nearly enough to handle all of the troubles here in Freeside. Every day they're dealing with new injuries, cases of addiction, so on and so forth. Julie Farkas, the leader of the Followers, wants us to help 2 people in particular, Jacob Hoff and Bill Ronze. This can be done in a variety of ways, like most quests in this game. To start, you can kick Jacob's dealer off the streets, and either give him a chemical detox or pass a speech check to force himself to sober up. And when it comes to Bill, you can do the same thing with the chemical detox, or you can just pass another speech check. Doing it with the speech check is the best way to complete this quest, since it can help you save on your limited supply of chems, especially Fixer, which is basically a temporary rehab cycle in a tin. Highly sought after in the area of Freeside. The Followers have more work for us after this. Well, kinda, but not really. You see, we can participate in an unmarked quest that involves us donating medical supplies to them, in exchange for a free faction reputation. Sounds kinda pointless, but getting a high rep with them is actually very worthwhile. Sadly, you have to donate more rare chems like Med-X and Fixer in large quantities if you want the best gains. Fixer is something I'm fine parting ways with, but having to get rid of my Med-X is a much harder pill to swallow. Med-X is basically just free DT at the end of the day, giving you a boost to your armor for a short period of time. Very useful in pretty much any combat scenario. Still though, after nearly emptying our pockets of all of our drugs, Julie will not only give us a discount on medical supplies, but also an invitation to join the Followers. On top of giving us a cool lab coat, we're also presented with a key to the Followers' safe house. This is where we can find some pretty damn impressive loot. A bunch of cool weapons, some skill magazines, but most importantly for us, a full set of reinforced combat armor, in perfect condition too. This is basically a direct upgrade over the armor we've been wearing thus far. Better DT in exchange for a little bit of added weight. It also looks like the combat armor from the classic games. Makes the absolutely awful trip we had here worth it. Oh yeah, we can also find a hunting shotgun in there. Shotguns in Fallout games have always been kinda hit or miss, with New Vegas being the exception to that rule. Case in point, the hunting shotgun. one of the few pump actions in the entire series. It's powerful, has surprisingly decent accuracy for a weapon of its class, making this thing very useful against unarmored targets. Or, if you take the Shock and Surgeon perk, useful against basically anything. It makes clearing out these Cazadors much easier. If you're wondering where I am now, this is the second of the semi-direct paths to New Vegas. This one pits you up against a swarm of Cazadors. These guys are demons, giant mutated tarantula hawks that can deal crazy damage, because after they sting you, you get poisoned with a ridiculously fast-acting venom. If you don't have any anti-venom on hand, you might as well reload a save to save yourself the embarrassment. But they have one major weakness. Obviously, a big flying bug relies heavily on its wings, so if you cripple them in VATS, they fall to the ground and can be taken out pretty quickly after that. Besides coming up here for some quick XP, I came all the way up here for a unique weapon. Which is probably not the one you all are thinking of, though. After clearing out Cazador Pass, we can reach the ruins of Bonnie Springs. Now, this place is basically just a giant raider settlement, which is fine because one of those raiders is carrying a very important weapon for us. The Jackal leader here carries a unique set of spiked knuckles, named Love and Hate. Depending on who you ask, this is either a reference to the 1955 film, Night of the Hunter, or Spike Lee's 1989 film, Do the Right Thing. Either way, these are pretty good. Not necessarily an upgrade over our Power Fist, but certainly a nice thing to add to the arsenal. Anyways, with our busy work out of the way, I say it's finally time for us to visit that vault we heard about earlier. Vault 22, and subsequently the quest attached to it, There Stands the Grass, is one of my favorite things in the entire game. It is genuinely one of the best and most interesting quests in the entire game, maybe even in the entire series, held up almost purely by its location. I know I said I wouldn't be doing any more spoiler tags for the rest of the video, but if you've been diving in this far, I really strongly suggest you skip this section and go and experience it for yourself. It really is that good. So Dr. Hildern wasn't kidding about those plants, because they do be spilling from the gate. We're greeted by a few stray mantises, a bad omen considering where we are. Once inside, we can find plant growth adorning all of the walls. The place seems to have some level of functioning electricity, but most of the more complicated equipment is broken down. The elevator being one of them, so if we want to explore the 5 or so floors this place has, we'll have to start walking. The first 2 floors are pretty quiet, literally no enemies. We can find what appears to be a makeshift living area in a lab though, doesn't look professionally done by any means. Maybe this is where Dr. Keeley was holed up? The 3rd floor is where things get pretty interesting. Meet the inhabitants of Vault 22. These are the spore carriers. One of the experiments that the scientists of the vault conducted involved a fungus designed for pest control. Eventually, after some experimentation, the fungus became airborne and many of the vault dwellers became sick with a strange illness. That illness is eventually what led to them becoming these horrible spore creatures, and likely what also led to the creation of these larger Venus flytrap-like creatures, simply called spore creatures in the game. These 2 enemies make this area feel all the more special, as this is the only place, in the base game anyways, where either of these enemies appear. That, and they can be surprisingly formidable in combat. Well, the spore creatures can be anyways. As we've seen, they take to hiding in large patches of grass, but they can also deal a lot of damage, especially the larger brute variants. Of course, you could always just shoot every single patch of grass you see, which completely negates any challenge here, but hey, they're still pretty cool. Anyways, we have 2 primary goals here. Find the data storage, and find Dr. Keeley. There is one other thing that I'm here to grab though, but we'll get to that when we get there. We have our work cut out for us though, as there are not only more of the spore carriers and plants to deal with, but there's also a neighboring cave system that has to deal with a mantis infestation. And that's where we find Keeley, just kind of chilling near a bunch of highly aggressive mantis and spore plants. She is thankful for our help, but tells us that there is still more work to be done. We meet her back up in the lab area from before, where she tells us her plan to take care of the spores infesting the vents, which is easy enough on paper. Just run downstairs and light the place up. This presents a major problem though. How exactly does one not self-immolate when doing all of that? Pretty simple actually. Just camp in the server room, where the fire is, for some reason, unable to spread. You have to open it by heading up to the Overseer's office or just having a really high lockpicking skill. This also lets us download the data we were sent here to collect in the first place. When we return to Keeley, she tells us that the last step in her plan is to wipe the data from existence. Sure, it is a major scientific discovery, but considering the fact that it led to, well, this, there is an argument to be made there. I say yes, fully knowing that I'm carrying a copy of whatever data was left on my Pip-Boy. She knows this too, but for some reason believes us and just lets us go. I'd lose a little karma, but frankly I don't care. The karma bonus for saving Keeley in the first place balances it out pretty heavily. After leaving Camp McCarran, we can speak with Dr. Williams, who thanks us for saving her friend. She called Dr. Hildern that morning and gave him a fairly stern talking to, apparent by his demeanor when we go to speak with him. Still, I hand over the data. We warn him of the dangers of the vault, but he doesn't really seem to care. Maybe Keeley was right. Either way, we get paid for the job, and since technically we've completed both halves of it, we walk out with a crisp $1,800 and a fuck ton of XP. This pushes me over the threshold to level 16, and the perk that I pick this time is Better Criticals. It does exactly what it says, makes your critical hits better, equating to a 50% damage increase. For a perk that has very few requirements, it's another no-brainer. And now, with our quest backlog completed, for the time being anyways, I head back into Freeside for some more work. And this time, I actually have the privilege of working with a celebrity. How many games can you think of where one of the primary factions is a cult of Elvis Presley impersonators? Not many, I'm sure. The Kings are the largest ruling gang in the Freeside area. They're the closest thing that Freesiders have to a proper police force too, seeing as they take care of most of the street thugs. But they have some problems with the NCR in the area. And for that reason, they ruthlessly discriminate against any and all NCR refugees. Regardless, after paying off his right-hand man, the king of rock and roll himself will agree to see us. He does have work for us, but it's nothing too crazy at the moment. It goes a little something like this. There are bodyguards who offer NCR tourists safe passage to the Strip. One of these guards, named Oris, has apparently made a pretty big name for himself, and the king calls bullshit. He wants us to hire him and see if his services are legit, even giving us the cash to do so. Things go smoothly enough until we're forced to make a detour due to some unsavory characters blocking our route. He ends up running ahead and taking out some more of the goons blocking our detour. Seems like he was worth the money, but by using basic intelligence, we can get him to admit about being a phony and get our money back. The king is reasonably happy with our performance, and offers us another, more substantial job. Due to the friction between the NCR refugees and the locals, there have been many violent brawls on the streets. One of those happened to be between a few people that the king was associated with. Go to the old Mormon fort and find out what happened. Sounds easy enough. When we get there, the guy is apprehensive until he learns that we're working for the king. He doesn't remember much, but one of the other kids has some enlightening details. Apparently, the trio were attacked by NCR soldiers, one of them apparently being as high of a rank as lieutenant. Seems that the NCR has a greater presence in the area than we initially expected. The king is displeased by this revelation and tells us to look more into this matter. He suggests that we start asking around the NCR squatter camps, and if not there, then at the old Mormon fort. And that's the first place I go, since to get the best possible outcome for this quest, we need to talk with Julie Farkas. She tells us the name of the lady in charge of the NCR presence in the area, and this connection to Julie could prove useful later. After that, I make a beeline right for the NCR's little soup kitchen in Lower Freeside. Now, on a first-time playthrough, you won't know where it is, and the intended path is actually to go to the squatter camps and do something. Honestly, I don't remember because it's been so long since I've actually done it that way. Pro tip, just go over there and pass this easy speech check and you can get in just fine. Once inside, we can find that the NCR troopers are overseeing an entire food relief effort, giving out fresh food and water rations to NCR refugees. Talking to Elizabeth, she tells us that they aren't serving locals due to the hostility posed by the Kings. She sent an encore sometime back to speak with the man, and when he came back beaten and disheveled, she decided to cut off the rest of Freeside from rationing. But when we return to the king, he has no knowledge of this. Apparently this whole thing went under his radar. Just as he's beginning to process this, of course, his right-hand man Pacer goes off and does something stupid. He got himself into a shootout with the NCR down by the train station. If you manage to do this quest properly, using your ties with Julie Farkas during dialogue with Elizabeth, the king will tell you to go and negotiate with the NCR troops. They're understandably not super pleased, but she does agree to the deal. And after returning to the king, we're rewarded handsomely, with a good chunk of XP and a favor from the king himself. Now, that favor can be one of three things, the third of which is technically a story spoiler, so I won't be going into it. We can either have him get us a pass onto the Strip, unnecessary as we now have more than enough money, or we can join the Kings. Besides giving us a few minor benefits, like being able to use the king's hairstylist, it's not really worth it. The only truly useful favor requires more story context, and we won't be getting that context until probably the next part of this series, so you're just gonna have to trust me on that one. Anyways, that's really the biggest quest in Freeside done. All of the other ones are just minor side bets, like recruiting a bunch of prostitutes for the Atomic Wrangler, including a sex bot. And yes, you true degens out there can pork the robot if you really want to. But because this channel is mostly advertiser-friendly, I decline its offer. This time anyways. With nothing stopping us though, as we have plenty of money to pass the credit check, I say it's time we finally walk onto the Strip. Moments after setting foot on the Strip, we're jump-scared by Victor, who tells us that we ought to go and meet the big man himself. After all, he would want to discuss business with us, chip or not. These doors opening now will mark the first time that they've opened for another human being since the beginning of the Great War. That was nearly 300 years ago, and thus, its interior has remained pretty much pristine. The sterile lack of life does make it a little creepy though, although that does make stealing everything from the safes in the back office much easier. Wait, why is there anything back here anyways? The casino never opened to the public. Whatever, we really shouldn't keep the boss waiting.
Enjoy your time in Vegas.
This meeting has been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Well, this is certainly a sight. Robert House himself in the computer screen. Yeah, if you were expecting him to be some kind of alive and moving around and shit, I don't really know what you were thinking. He was pushing old age even before the war, so he thought the best course of action would be to hook himself up to a bunch of super complex machinery so that he could live forever. And that is why he sat up in the tower for so long, because he physically couldn't leave, only being able to use his Securitrons as his hands and eyes and the waists. But with our arrival, he has a new method of carrying out his agenda. There is no point in wasting any time here, so I'll cut to the chase. He wants the chip, plain and simple. Bring it to him and he'll pay us and tell us the next step of the plan. He's also nice enough to cop us the presidential suite and give us an all-access pass to the casino's facilities, just as a little preemptive thank you. With all of that being said, I think it's time to head over to the Tops Casino and deal with Mr. Checkered Suit. We have to turn over our weapons before being able to access the casino, leading to one of the rare instances when I have to use holdout weapons. Only a very small number of weapons can be carried into casinos. Knives, knuckle dusters, and on the larger side, some handguns and revolvers. Due to my low sneak skill, I can only squeeze in a silenced .22 pistol purchased at the Gunrunners, and my unique spike knuckles. More than enough though, seeing as all of the chairmen inside are entirely unarmored, and can be easily dispatched with a well-placed sneak crit. Now, there are many ways to deal with Benny. You could just run up and shoot him a bunch of times, or you could convince him to meet you up alone in the presidential suite. Or you can mess it up and have him escape, which leads to several different outcomes in and of itself. My personal favorite method involves getting his right-hand man, Swank, to turn on him. This requires us to do a little bit of detective work. By using the special cigarette lighter we got from Jessup, a note from Manny's corpse back in Novak, and some distinctive cigarette butts left by Manny at our grave all the way back in Good Springs, we can convince him. He'll let us carry our weapons freely into the casino, and gives us free access to his private suite. Now, this private suite holds quite the secret.
Hey! Hi there! Good to meet you. What can I do for you today?
This is Yes Man. He's a Securitron reprogrammed by Benny to act as a personal assistant and, well, Yes Man. This all stems into his reasoning for wanting the Platinum chip. Yes Man was unable to properly crack the chip's encryption, but by using some reasonable logic, he's deduced that it's likely to upgrade Mr. House's defenses, probably his Securitrons. The chip can only be read with proprietary hardware, and only 2 devices with such hardware exist, one of them being in the Lucky 38, and the other atop Fortification Hill. Benny's whole plan with the chip is simple enough, though. If he could get House out of the picture and have access to his systems, he could upload Yes Man's artificial consciousness into the servers, and with the chip in hand could effectively become the new ruler of Vegas. Seems a little short-sighted of him to have his robot friend incapable of not telling this to everyone he meets, though.
That was probably pretty dumb, huh?
But all of this brings up an interesting point. Since Yes Man is, incapable of saying no, anyone could be the one orchestrating this plan, including us. All we'd need to do is take House out of the picture, and then we'd be able to deal with the rest of the factions as we see fit. This is where the final of the 4 main factions is finally revealed, although calling it as a faction is a little rich, seeing as it would just be us and Yes Man. In reality, this is just a really clever way for the developers to add a failsafe to the game in case you've managed to irrevocably fuck up your save file. Yes Man is not only incapable of saying no, but he's also one of the only characters in the game to not be marked as essential, meaning he literally cannot be killed. Which makes this ending possible even if you pissed off every other faction in the game. Beyond that, this ending gives the player direct agency to do as they see fit with the rest of the factions. Don't like him? Just wipe him out. Or, just leave him alone if you want. The choice is entirely up to you. But for the time being, we still have bigger problems. And besides, getting into faction drama now is just a waste. So instead, let's deal with Benny. By speaking with Swank again, we can have Benny sent up to his room alone, allowing us to confront the man one-on-one.
What in the goddamn?
He tries to bargain his way out, but after a wrong turn in the conversation, he starts blasting. Well, tries to anyways. I beat him into a corner with my brass knuckles. I think he gets 1, maybe 2 shots off before going down like a sack of potatoes. I think I'll take that suit, though. Oh, yeah, and the Platinum chip, that's right. That would be kind of silly to leave that. Once we leave the Tops, though, we're confronted by none other than the Legion's biggest furry. He's here on the strip to give us an invitation to the fort, as our antics have caught the attention of Caesar himself. Could come in handy. Upon returning to House, we can inquire about the chip's purpose, to which he is more than happy to give us a demonstration. He takes us down to the basement, where he gives us a lowdown on the Securitron's Mark I software. It's effective enough, 9mm submachine guns and Gatling lasers are nothing to scoff at, but compared to the Mark II software, this is nothing. This is where the chip comes in, basically being an operating system upgrade for the Securitrons. They now have access to a grenade launcher, a missile launcher, as well as full control of their onboard auto repair systems. Sounds like a pretty damn good deal. With the demonstration over, though, we return to the penthouse. Our next step involves going to Fortification Hill, just like Yes Man said. Only problem being that would require us to go straight into the arms of the Legion, as the fort is quite literally built around the same building we need to access. This is where the Legion's invite will come in handy, as it should provide us with a safe passage to the fort. Then, the only problem will be getting to the panel we need to access. But that'll come later. The journey to the fort will take time, and God only knows what'll happen on the road. Karma would indicate it can't possibly be as bad as last time, though.